Good morning. Welcome, everybody. In a few minutes, we are going to start the webinar. You have some minutes to do this activity, as you can see on the screen. Please follow the instructions and see you soon in a few minutes. Thank you so much. And of course, Professor is going to join us in a very interesting webinar, but he needs to feel the connection with us, right? So please turn on the cameras. Thank you. I am Luisa Lopez, and I am the Junior Coordinator for the activities for junior researchers at the International Society for Innovation. So I'm so glad that you are all here. Thank you for joining. We will have today with us for this first webinar, Professor Dr. Eelko Huizingh. He is an Associate Professor of Innovation Management at the University of Groningen in Netherlands. He has been active in academic publishing for over 35 years and is a prolific high-level academic researcher. So it's going to be interesting, this webinar. His track record includes over 500 publications, including several papers in top-level academic journals. More than 10 of his articles have been cited, each more than 100 times. Some of them even have 1,000 or 2,000 citations. He has been guest editor of more than 40 special issues of various academic journals. Dr. Huizingh was Vice President, Scientific Affairs of ISPIM for more than 15 years. He also runs a part-time company in which he gives workshops on academic talent development, academic research, and academic writing. He has given over 200 workshops all across the globe in the past 15 years. Recently, he published the book Unlocking PhD Success: How to Acquire Crucial PhD Skills. The book started as a reader he wrote for his academic talent development workshop, and his book is the basis for today's event. So please welcome Dr. Eelko Huizingh. I'll leave the floor to him, and please enjoy and make the best of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Louisa, for these very kind words at the start of this webinar. From my side, a very warm welcome to all of you. My side is from the Netherlands. I think we have a very global setting here as well, people joining in from all over the world. So it's great to be part of this, just my honor. What I would like to do in this morning session is to discuss how to develop your skills as a PhD student. As a starter, you could have seen that on my slide, my starter slide. I've keyed in a couple of statements in Mentimeter and asked you to rate how you think about them. So as a starter, I will now have a look at your answers. I haven't seen them yet myself, so I'm also looking forward to what the results are. So I will now look at my Menti screen, and I will share that screen now so that you can also see what results we've gotten. So hopefully, if it all works technically, then within a few seconds, you should be able to see my screen that I have here to the right. So the question was, to what extent do you agree with the following statements? The first one was, before I started my project, I knew what skills I needed, an average score of 2.8. So it seems that most of you were not, at least not fully aware of the skills that you would need for your PhD. The second statement was, during my PhD, I discovered new skills that I needed to develop. And that's something that I often hear also in my workshops, that doing a PhD is also kind of adventure trip. And during that trip, you certainly are faced with challenges that you haven't fought before, and that requires new skills to deal with them. A lack of skills negatively impacts progress in my project. The highest, well, not fully the highest average, but a very high average of 6.2. If it is an odd thing, as a PhD student, you start a large research project, usually something that you've never done before, and then people assume that you will just be able to do it. That is an odd case. If I want to build a new house, I won't hire a builder who has never built a house before, but that is actually what we do with PhD students. We give them a research project and assume that they're able to do it from start to finish, even though they have never done such a big project. And then quite often we see that PhD students run into time issues. I feel anxious because I lack certain PhD skills. Well, happy to see that the score is no more or less in the middle. And then the final one, and that was a statement where all of you seem to fully agree. Starting a PhD means starting a learning process. Doesn't happen often. If I make statements that everyone scores, I fully agree, but I'm actually very happy to see that these are the results that I received, that you all seem to agree. What I will do now is that I will stop sharing my Menti screen with you, and I will now return to my PowerPoint slides because I have a number of slides, as Louise already said, based on the book that I published a while ago for Springer, and that was based on one of my workshops, the Academic Talent Development Workshop. We've already seen a little bit about your skills, so the questions that I just had. When it's about PhD skills, I think the most important thing is that you put yourself in the driver's seat and that you remain in the driver's seat so that you don't let chance influence which skills you develop and when you develop and how you develop them, but that you think about them. Which skills do I need and how could I grow? How could I further develop my skills? So that means that you first need to think about the question, what skills are actually needed, both in general as PhD students, but most of all, because you all do a different research project, which skills are needed for my particular project? Then it's a matter of, well, let's say, looking into the mirror. If I review my own skills, which skills are already at the level that I would need for my research project, and which skills would I need to further grow in order to be able to do my research. And then you can think about how to get better, how to improve your skills. And it is actually a cycle, because when you start developing your skills, you will also get a better understanding of what particular skills you would need. And when you use your skills, because skills are things that you do not just learn, but things that you apply. When you apply your skills, you will also get a better understanding of how good you are and what is really needed for your research project. But the most important thing here is put yourself in the driver's seat regarding your skills development. If you do so, then that will make doing your PhD projects easier. So you will end up with a better project. You can do it faster and also with more confidence. I've noticed in my workshops quite often that PhD students lack confidence, while I think you've been selected. So you are all smart, you're all hardworking, so you all should be able to finish your PhD project well. When it is about developing skills, then usually in the literature a model with 3 different zones is being used. It starts with the comfort zone, and you may be familiar with that term. That is basically about everything that you confidently can say, well, I'm able to do these tasks. Outside that comfort zone is what's called the learning zone. So these are tasks that you don't really feel comfortable with. You may feel a little bit anxious if you have to do them, but this is the zone where you can stretch your skills. So I always recommend to do tasks that are a bit outside your comfort zone. A bit outside because the third zone is farther outside the comfort zone. And well, if you just see the label panic zone, you already realize this is not the zone where you need to get in. So it's good to be ambitious, but don't overstretch. So don't take on tasks that are just too far from your current skills. So one of the things that I always maintain during my workshops, regard skills development not as jumps, but as steps. So grow your skills step by step, enlarge your comfort zone step by each time doing tasks a bit outside that comfort zone in your learning zone. So what could be good skills? What could be a good strategy to do your research work? Well, in order to get some insight in that, it makes sense to have a look at how top researchers are doing their work. And I've got 7, well, you could call it strategies that top researchers apply in their work. The first thing is quality. Always strive for high quality. So don't do sloppy work. Each stage in your research project, when it is about reviewing literature, defining a research question, collecting data, doing the data analysis, make sure that you strive for high quality. Doing a good thing is very important, but it's also important, I would say equally important, that other people notice that too. So make sure that you are visible. Visible can be in many different ways. Simple way is to write articles and to publish them in major journals, but also to attend conferences in your area. Those are ways by which you make yourself and your work visible to the rest of the world. Academic work is definitely not 9 to 5 work. I guess you've all find out by now. So you need to have passion for your work. I sometimes say as soon as your work becomes work, well, then maybe it's time to have a look for another job. It is not 9 to 5 work. Sometimes you have to spend the evenings or weekends on your work, and then it helps a lot if you're really passionate about what you're doing. The fourth strategy is having a vision. Usually we do not do one task, we do not do one project, but multiple of them. But make sure that the projects of the part projects in your PhD project, that they are somehow connected to each other. So that there is synergy, that maybe you can use the same literature for multiple projects or the same data or the same method. Anyhow, make sure that at the end of the day, you can tell a story about what you have done and not, well, I've done project 1 and project 2 and project 3, but be able to tell how these projects are linked to each other. The fifth one is collaboration. I will talk about that later on, but that is definitely very important in academia. The reason for that is actually very simple. Each one of you in this webinar knows something that I don't know. And that is true for each and every one of us. So in that sense, we can all benefit from teaming up with other researchers. Having said that, pick your collaboration partners wisely. So look for people that somehow complement your skills or that maybe have already published in journals that you would love to publish too. Sixth one is honesty. The short answer, the short reason for that is that there are no shortcuts. So trust plays a large role in academia. So make sure you do your work in an honest and fair way. And the final one, I've put that on top, is the famous KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. usually when you work in an academic setting, you can do so many different fascinating projects. When you're passionate about your topic, it's very tempting to jump on this bandwagon and that one. But we all just have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and probably also want to have a personal life as well. So a very important skill that you also need is the skill to say, no, I'm sorry, it's a great idea, but at this moment, I'm already fully loaded. Maybe next year, but not now. So these are strategies that top academics apply. So what are then the skills that you need as a PhD student? Well, I've grouped them in 3 categories regarding doing, communicating, and managing. And for each of them, I discuss in my book in detail 2 skills. The first one regarding doing is research and collaboration. I've already mentioned that. In terms of communicating about your research, it goes in terms of papers, so writing or orally when you present your research. And in terms of managing, it's both about time management and about persistence. Briefly about all of these 6 skills. Research has to do both with more general academic competencies, so like critical thinking, but also about methodological skills. And that is, of course, different for each of you. You all do a different research project, so you all probably need different methodological skills. But it's important that you are aware of how a method and which methods are out there, what the pros and cons of various methods are, and that you update your knowledge or skills regarding how to use these methods. Collaboration, most of all, it's collaboration with your supervisor. That's the most important one. But the academic world is quite open world. So if you meet other researchers, you can and you have a chat with them, you can easily start a new collaboration, a joint research project. Writing and presenting are the 2 main ways to share your results. I definitely recommend you not to wait with writing or sharing the results of your research until the end of your research project, but start writing as soon as possible. Attend conferences as soon as possible in your PhD project. That is both stimulating and you also gain from it. Then in terms of managing time management, well, I've already mentioned that academic work is not a 9-to-5 job. So at the start of your PhD project, you may think, oh, I've got 3 or 4 years just for my PhD. Then it sounds like an enormous amount of time, but usually the farther you are, the faster the clock seems to tick. So time management then definitely is something you need to be able to. And then the final one, persistence. No matter of how well you plan your project, always things will happen that you did not anticipate. There's actually a famous statement, I think, of Einstein, who once said that if nothing goes wrong in your research project, you were not ambitious enough. So if you are ambitious, then you will jump and bump into unexpected things. I would like to raise a question in regarding this, how to overcome setbacks and how to deal with stress. The question that I would like to raise to all of you is, how do you deal with stress? And that is a question that I will now open in Mentimeter again. So I hope you still have the tab open. I will share my Menti screen so then you can also see it. It is the same code if you have closed your Menti tab that we used before. So here you can see my Menti screen with the code on top. How do you deal with stress? To keep things simple, included just 2 options. And that is, I love strict deadlines, or the other one, I hate stress. I need space and time, and only then I can work. I see the first responses coming in. It seems until now that most of you love strict deadlines and are not so fond of stress. Here we've got someone who doesn't like stress. In general, you could say deadlines are horrible. That's probably also why they once defined that word as deadline. But at the same time, deadlines are great because deadlines motivate you to finish something on time. And the other good thing of a deadline is that once the deadline is passed, once you've made it to the deadline, then you've time to relax. And that is, of course, a positive side. Nevertheless, and I will now stop sharing my Menti screen and return to my PowerPoint slide. Nevertheless, I've learned over the years that stress is definitely something that is and that plays an important role in PhD projects. So here, this is a famous curve regarding the link between the stress level and performance. The story goes that too less stress is not a good thing. If things are very easy for you, if you're not really challenged, then things are boring. However, too much stress is also not good. That will make you tired, maybe even push you into a panic or breakdown and ultimately in a burnout zone. A short period of high stress, maybe before a deadline, that is not bad. That will actually bring you in that peak performance area where you feel that you have a lot of energy and that you're really focused, and you may be familiar with the term of being in flow. That is in that middle part, but it should just be temporary. So if you would feel that your stress level is high for a long period of time, then don't just keep on going because I think I can do it. Your health is more important than your PhD. And actually, if you would end up in a burnout, you also won't get your PhD. So be careful about too much stress for too long. Then about the skills you need to improve. Obviously, it is about skills that you need in your research project, but that you currently lack. However, you may also think about how important are skills for my project. When they are crucial, well, then it's clear you need these skills, but some other skills are more maybe nice to have than need to have. In terms of growing your skills, it also makes sense to think about the timing, the planning of your project. So when in your project would you need certain skills? So if you still need to collect data, well, then it doesn't matter that you lack certain skills about analyzing your data, because that will probably only be next year or so. And the final factor that plays a role about thinking what skills to improve is whether there are possible workarounds. So sometimes you don't have to do it all by yourself. You can collaborate, I've already mentioned that a few times, maybe with other researchers who have the skills that you currently lack, or maybe you can hire someone to help you. So it's not necessarily the case that you do it all by yourself. So that is about what skills, then about the timing. I've already said, have a look at your project plan. So when would you need which skills? Another good strategy when it's about when to develop skills is to think about what is actually low-hanging fruit, because there's nothing more motivating than success. So if you're able to make a few steps forward on something, that gives just a great feeling, and that motivates to also tackle maybe skills that you don't like that much, that seems to be more complex or harder for you to get. And also be realistic. I've noticed that quite a lot of PhD students struggle with this. They want to do a perfect job, which is definitely a great thing to strive for, but no one is perfect. And if your level is now maybe on a 10-point scale, just at level 3, you can never make a jump just from level 3 to level 10. And it's also the question whether you would really need level 10 for your research project. So think about, where am I currently? And if I'm currently at level 3, then what could I do, first of all, to get to level 4? And when I'm at level 4, well, then maybe I can start thinking about taking it to level 5. So plan realistic steps and realize you don't have to be perfect. I can put it in other words, no one is. Then the final step in my set of slides is about how to acquire skills. There are many different ways by which you can do it, and I've put 8 of them on this slide. Actually, that hasn't been said yet, but I'm happy to share my slides after this session. I saw some people making notes, so maybe I should have said that earlier on, but I'm happy to share them afterwards. First of all, there is a lot available on the internet. So there are people who write blogs, there are YouTube videos. So there's already a lot on the internet that is useful for you if you want to use a complex statistical method. My guess would be someone has made a video where they show stepwise how to do such an analysis. So just by reading and watching, you can already update a lot of your skills. Attend academic events. ISPIM organizes multiple events a year. Just earlier this week, they had one, and other international organizations do it too. Also, universities often have internal research seminar series. Go to such events, then you will learn about your topic, about how other people do research, how research methods are being applied, how in academia people present and discuss their research. So just by attending, just by listening, you can learn how to do certain things. Some people are very good. Some papers are great. Some people can present in a wonderful way. Well, next time you bump into such a thing, then maybe don't look at the content, but just look at how they do it. So if you have a great paper published in a top-level journal, then spend an hour not looking at the content, but just looking at the structure of that article. How have they structured their story? Why is it a logical story? Why does one topic more or less naturally flow into the next one? How do they build up their arguments? How do they present their results? In that way, you can learn a lot. You don't have to invent the wheel yourself if someone has already done that. And that is also about little things. If you want to have a table or a graph in your article, and you're not sure how to structure it, well, just look at a couple of papers where they used a similar research method, how these researchers structured their table, what statistics they report in that table, and just do a similar thing for your own article. Discuss with supervisors and colleagues. You may feel that you're just a starting researcher. Well, everyone has been in that stage, and there are lots of people out there who are happy to help you out with your work. So discuss with your supervisor, discuss with other PhD students, discuss with other senior researchers in your research group, or if you meet them at conferences, don't hide the things that you're not certain about, but just ask them for advice. Participate in doctoral colloquia. ISPIM also organizes each time a PhD lab. These events are organized for PhD students, sometimes also just by PhD students, and you will learn a lot about how to do PhD research, and at the same time you will also meet both other PhD students and sometimes also senior researchers. So it's also a great way of building a network. A lot of knowledge in academia is what is called tacit knowledge. So that is knowledge that is not easy to write down in text, but that is knowledge that you can only learn when you collaborate with other people, when you watch and listen and see how they do certain things. So just by collaborating with more senior researchers, you will be able to develop your own skills. Learning by doing, sometimes you just need to do it, but realize that you need to think about how safe the setting is. So if you think that it's scary to talk in front of an audience of senior researchers, well, then maybe it's good to ask maybe at your own research group whether you could give a lecture or part of a lecture for bachelor students. Then you also need to talk in front of an audience, but then it is in a much more safe setting. So match the step outside into your learning zone with how safe the setting is in which you practice. And the final one I've got here on my list is that there are all kinds of training events. Actually, this is a good case. I also organize workshops, but there are also lots of other events, both at your own university or organized by international organizations, seminars, workshops, training courses that you can join. So there are lots of ways by which you can further improve your skills. And then to finalize my talk, first of all, and I was very happy to see in Mentimeter that you all agreed, indeed, the PhD is a learning process. So the next time you find out that you lack certain skills, that you're not able to do something, don't feel anxious. It's just part of being a PhD student. And then think about, how can I get those skills? Select the skills to grow. So what I already said, put yourself in the driver's seat. Think about what skills you need, when and what way would work for you to grow that particular skill. And then the final one, there are many ways to develop your skills. I just had 8 of them on my slide. So if one way of further growing your skills doesn't work, well, probably then there is another way that will. And then if you would like to know more, you can always send an email to me. That is what I wanted to share this morning with you. I think we still have time for some questions and answers. In order to enable that, I will stop sharing my screen, and then I would say I'm open for any questions. So if you would like to ask one, just unmute yourself and ask your question. I know it's always a scary thing to be the first one, but someone needs to be the first one. So if there's anything that you would like to know about skills in PhD, or maybe about doing your PhD project, or about specific issues, then don't hesitate. I'm here to answer your question.
Thank you, Dr. Eelko. Well, we have a shy audience today, I think.
Or maybe
Well,
everything was clear, and when everything is clear, there is also nothing to ask.
Yes,
Louisa.
actually, absolutely. Actually,
Yeah.
I received a question, a person saying that is shy. So she's asking if being a shy person, how can she develop the communication skills to cope with some difficulties on her skills in this regard. So if you have some advice, it will be very welcome.
when it's about to present for an audience, and I can imagine if you're shy, then that is a scary thing. You're standing in front of a room filled with people who probably know a lot more than you do about this topic. And then there is silence and everyone is looking and staring at you. And now you need to come up with a great story. Well, I can imagine that is scary. A few things. First of all, these people may know a lot more about a lot of things, but you are the expert regarding your research project. You know a lot more about your research project than anyone in that room. That's the first thing. The second thing is that all these people in that room, they also once did it for the first time ever in their lives. So also for them, it once was a scary thing to stand there and to give a talk. So if you struggle a bit with it because it's the first time you ever do it, these people will not hate you, they will not laugh at you, but they will probably think, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, I was standing there too for the first time. That was horrible. Having said those things, you can also make it easier for yourself. So I already said, if you think it's scary to talk to an audience, then do it in a safer setting. So if you need to give a talk at a conference, you can also volunteer for your own research group to give that talk first. Or invite a couple of other PhD students, offer them a cup of coffee and say, for 20 minutes, you guys need to shut up and I will give my talk and please give me feedback. If you still think that that is not safe enough, I actually once had someone in one of my workshops who told me that she had an even more safe setting. She actually practiced her talk at home in front of all her stuffed animals. Well, that is a very safe setting. Maybe you won't get great feedback, but it's definitely the case that no one will run away during your talk or laugh at you or whatever. And then the final thing that I wanted to say, I've already mentioned that if you do something like this, giving a talk, it's a scary thing the first time, but you also build your skills stepwise. So when you're shy, please still do it. And you will notice that it will be a little bit less horrible than you thought. So you've been able to make a first step on your skills grow path. And then when you do it the second time, it turns out to be even a little bit less horrible. And step by step, you will get to the point that you're just skilled in doing so. I hope that answers the question. Louisa, have you received questions in the meantime or someone else?
Yes, we have a question here. Thank you,
Yeah.
Professor. How we could be sure that a skill that we want to improve is exactly what we need? Why if it change over time because our project may change? This is the question. Two questions in one.
First of all, the first part I can fairly easily answer. The proof is in eating the pudding. So when you improve a skill and then you start using it and then you think, oh my gosh, I didn't learn the right skill. Well, then you clearly have feedback. So that I actually didn't discuss that this morning, but that is what I do in my workshop as well. Skills is not about knowledge, but skills is about things you're able to do. So also think about what feedback could signal that I made a step forward. Sometimes you can do it by yourself. So just like the previous question, if you're shy and you think it's horrible and you still give your talk and then later on, it feels much better. Well, that's a sign feedback for yourself. Sometimes you need feedback from others. So if you want to signal confidence when giving a talk, you could ask a colleague who is in the audience to give you feedback afterwards. And that can also be done if you've made slides and you're not certain whether your slides are clear, or maybe have too much text or not in the right order or whatever. Just use those slides or show those slides to a colleague and ask them what they think about it. And then the second point, it was about when the project will change over time. Well, that stresses the importance of the timing of skills development, so that it could not be, it's maybe not smart to develop in first 3 months skills that you will only need in 2 years' time. Because indeed, in these 2 years, things may change. Things will probably change. It will be very odd if things won't change. You will learn new things. You will meet new people. You will learn about new problems, new data sets, new methods. So also in terms of planning your project, I usually recommend to plan your project in a way that you have a number of sub-projects, and if possible at the start, if you have, let's say, planned to do 3 sub-projects, then only plan the first 2, because the first 2 will take a couple of years, and as I already said, during these years, all kind of things will happen. You will get all kind of great new ideas. You will meet other researchers with whom you can collaborate. You will stumble upon data you haven't thought about. So please leave room to use those great ideas as your final project. And then indeed, it could be the case that you need other skills for that as well. But then you can develop that when you need those skills, and then you haven't wasted your time in year 1 because you thought that in year 3 you would do this and this sub-project that in hindsight you don't do. I hope that answers the question. Louisa, do you have another one?
Yes, Professor, we have...
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, please jump in.
I would have a question. First of all, thank you very much for the inspiring talk you gave. And then I wanted to just highlight one particular aspect of what you said, because I found it very inspiring. If you indeed still have questions or are unsure about certain things about your own research, I think it's very wise to communicate that to the audience, because that will put them in a position where they can help you actually, instead of criticizing you. And that will ask them to provide their valuable knowledge to you. So I thought it was an excellent strategy that you outlined, where you have to be a bit bold, but I think it's wise to follow along. And then I also have a question regarding reading, actually, because I'm struggling not so much with the writing as with the reading. I feel there are a lot of streamlined papers out there where people follow strict rules and make it kind of boring therein. So what do you recommend here to improve the reading?
Yeah, first of all, Matthias, thanks also about your statement. I will make one short comment about it. I think it's wise when you go to a conference or give a talk to think about what is the impact that I want to make? What is it that I want to get out of it? And if you are in the early stages of your research project, then showing off that you do great research is not so important. It's much more important that you get useful feedback, advice from senior researchers in your audience. However, if you are near the end of your PhD project, if you are about to enter the job market and want to stay working in academia, then it's probably the moment that you want to show off. I'm a great researcher and you guys should hire me. That is then probably the underlying message that you want to share with your audience. So think what you want to get out of it when you give such a talk. Then the second thing is about reading. What I always recommend is to use a reading strategy. When you're relatively new in a certain area, then it is important to update yourself on various research streams or concepts or theories being used in that area. I would recommend at that stage to mainly read systematic literature review articles and meta-analysis, because these are typically articles that give a broad overview on what is known in a certain area and what is unknown, what we agree upon in our area and what we seem to disagree upon in our area. Such articles also have the great advantage that you usually come with dozens and dozens of references. So it means that they are also great starting points for diving deeper into the literature. Then in the next stage, when you more or less know what you will study, then you can read articles that are about specific research projects. So primary research-based articles. When reading such articles, I would recommend not to read those articles just from the first page until the final page, which what I would recommend doing with these literature reviews and meta-analysis articles in the first stage. But in that second stage, you already know more or less what you will study, but you need some specific insights. Maybe I want to develop a survey and I want to know how to measure a concept. So then my interest is not so much in what theory has this article used. No, my interest is how did they measure this concept in this article? And why did they measure it like this? And is that in line with how I would use this concept in my study? So before reading these primary research articles, ask yourself, what is it that I need for my research project? And then just search for this part in the article. If you don't do it, then I've learned over the years that article reading is a lot of fun because we are passionate about our research topic, but it's probably also the topic with which we can most easily waste a lot of time. So make sure that, again, you put yourself in the driver's seat and that you don't passively read the article from the first to the final line. That is a lot of fun, but takes too much time that you probably lack. I hope that answers your question, Matthias. I see you nodding, thumbs up, so great. Good luck. Louisa.
Great answer, Professor. Actually, I find myself in the same situation, reading lots of articles and sometimes losing myself in all the ideas. So thank you for this practical advice. Anyone else who would love to ask something to the professor? Please unmute your mic. If nobody has a question, I have one, actually two here in the chat. Okay. It says,
yep.
What is the right structure of a personal academic development plan? And what happens when you cannot count on your supervisor's help to follow the plan for your PhD?
Well, two different questions. The first one, a personal academic development plan is a plan in which you write down what kind of skills development you would like to realize, in what way and when, and also which feedback would signal, yes, I've made this step forward. For several reasons, I always recommend to make such a plan. First of all, it forces yourself to put yourself in the driver's seat. I've already mentioned that several times in the past hour. It forces yourself to think about what skills are needed for my research project. It forces yourself to look into the mirror. How good am I at these various issues? And where do I need to grow my skills? And it also forces you to think about timing. So what do I need first? What is most important for my research project? And what should I work on first? And the final thing, I've already said that nothing is more motivating than success. So you make such a plan not only once, but you need to revisit it from time to time. And then it's great, it's motivating to see that you've made steps forward, that you've been able to develop your skills, and that motivates to take the next steps. Then regarding your question about supervisor, I think I already said that collaboration with your supervisor is the most important one in your PhD. It is the most frequent one, it's the most long-lasting one, and it's also the one that has the largest impact on your PhD success. An ideal supervisor is someone who is an expert in your area, who is an expert in the research methods that you intend to use, and who has lots of time to give you good feedback. That is the ideal supervisor, but as we all know, human beings are never ideal or perfect. So probably your supervisor will lack at least part of these, well, call them skills. The first thing I would then say is realize what your supervisor is lacking. So in my workshops, I recommend PhD students to study their supervisor. So a simple way of doing it is talk with current or past PhD students supervised by your supervisor. These PhD students can tell you a lot about not only all the great skills of your supervisor, but also of the not so good skills of your supervisor. And they can probably give you a lot of tips about how best to deal with your supervisor. When you've studied your supervisor, you'll probably also notice certain weaknesses. So if you know that your supervisor has never ever in a research project used a method that you want to use, well, then you already know in advance, if I'm struggling with this method, my supervisor should not be the first person I can turn to. So in that case, realize that in advance and think in advance about what you can do. So if your supervisors never use that method, then it should be either you who becomes an expert in that method. So maybe you need to buy a book, watch YouTube videos with that method, or take a training course on that method. Or you should say, dear supervisor, we are going to use this method. I've never used it. I know you've never used it, but maybe for this project, we should ask someone else to join us. And I just happen to know this researcher, and this researcher has used this method many times before. So maybe we can invite this researcher to become part of the research team for this particular part of my PhD. So in that way, you can counteract on, well, call it the weaknesses of your supervisor, and still to make sure that you can finish your PhD well. I see you nodding, so it seems that this was a useful answer. It's about 10 o'clock, maybe even after. I still have time for a final question, but if you want to wrap up, maybe some of you have other things to do this morning, then that's fine with me as well. I'll leave it up to you, Louisa.
Well, Professor, I'll be waiting for other questions, but it seems like it was very clear. It was a great presentation, very clear indeed. And well, as you said, we finished our hour, and I would like to invite you, everybody, to follow our activities. And of course, if you want more information about Professor's book, you can find the link in the chat. So please visit for more activities of Junior Researchers team that we are running. Of course, visit our website and the book, please. So I'll be sharing also all the slides with you, participants of the webinar, and thank you for joining us. It was a great workshop. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
And you, good luck with your projects, and it's a small world. One day we'll meet again. Until then, good luck and bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Good night. Have a good day. Bye bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you so
You too.
much.
Bye-bye.